Right now the right branch has the right of way. I'm going to try to shift the right of way to the left branch.
Hello, I'm James Ingram. This video was digitized from a 1992 videotape series named V9202. You're watching Module 9B from the videotape series, which is the demonstration of automatic route selection. Please keep in mind there's also a Module 7A, 7B, a Module 8, a Module 9A, and a Module 9C for this same unit, the automatic switching system.
What we've got here is a track plan that approximates what was in the publication we were just looking at a minute ago. The automatic switching system set up for automatic route selection. Here's the here's a converging switch here with the train back there in the rear on the corner. Here's the diverging switch. It's initially set to straight. What'll happen when the train goes over this track contact here, and I don't know if you can see the switch move or not. I still left the piece of paper on the end of the arm. You might be able to see the piece of paper moving if the engine doesn't cover it up. But when it goes over this track contact here, it will set that switch to curved. So the next time it comes around, it'll be routed on the curved path. When it then goes over the curved path, it'll go over this track contact and set that switch back to straight. So next time it comes around, it'll be routed around the straight path, and it'll set the switch to curved again. So let's start the train up and observe this action. Now the switch is now set to straight. Now the switch has been set back to curved again. Now the switch has been set back to straight again. This block is shown heavy on this side and dotted on this side to indicate that the power is on this leg of the switch. So as this thing is shown, this train will have the right of way because this block is powered, this block is unpowered. So let's see if we can follow this diagram. This train will come through here. It's got the powered block, so it'll keep going, and it'll encounter a curved switch. Here we are. There are two trains ready to start. The train over on this side, the green one back here, will have the right of way because of the way the switch is set. The switch is set with the arm toward that side, which gives this block the power, which will give that green train the right of way. And the front switch up here is set to curved, the same way as shown in the diagram, so that train initially will go curved. An important point to note on here is when the two trains are sitting like this, whichever side initially has the right of way will stay with that right of way. In other words, this side is going to have the right of way, and notice as these operate that whatever train is on this block here will have the right of way over this block here because of the way we started them. We can also start them so this block here will have the right of way consistently, which I'll demonstrate next. But right now I'm duplicating the initial conditions that were shown in the publication, the paper diagram we were just looking at. So as this thing is going to operate for the next minute or so, this side over here will always have the right of way. Let's take a look at this thing in motion. And again, notice each time as a train goes over that track contact, it shifts the front switch, the diverging switch, so that the next train goes the other direction. Now notice that as you're looking at it, it's the left leg back in the rear. The left leg consistently has the right of way. This is the basics of what I would call a basic automatic route selection system for two trains, where you've got two alternate routes, and your switching system is configured so the trains keep switching routes. Notice each time around, each train takes the other path. They keep shifting paths. What I'm going to do now is just basically change the initial conditions by shifting this switch contact to this side, which as you're looking at it in the camera would be over to the right. This train will now pull out first, and basically it'll give this side the right of way consistently. I think I need to shift this switch here. It doesn't really matter because it'll go the other direction, but I'm going to shift this switch to straight. But what we'll have now is that red train will pull out first and take that path, and it'll give this leg consistently the right of way. Let's watch that in operation. Notice now that as you're looking at it, the leg that's on the right side now has the right of way. Remember previously the left leg was the one that had the right of way. Now the train on the left leg is stopping and waiting for the train on the right leg, which has the right of way. But again, notice the engines are still alternating paths. Now let's do one more experiment here real quick if we can. Now let's do one more experiment here real quick if we can. Notice again with both these last two situations that we ran, the engines keep switching paths. What we've done so far is we've varied which of these two paths had the right of way, but the engines keep switching paths. Now there's another trick you can do with this automatic route selection. You can keep the same train on the same path. Let's say these two trains don't really care. Either one is capable of running either path, but let's say one of these trains was a real long, heavy train, and one of the paths, say, was an elevated route that the heavy one couldn't climb, and you might want to always keep the heavy one on the lower route. In that case, you wouldn't want the trains changing routes. You might want one train to stay on the same route all the time. We can do that just by switching the two wires on this switch motor here, which will change the logic of this enough to do that. I'm going to try to do it right here while the camera's running. Okay, what I've done here is I've swapped these two wires going into the switch motor. So what that should do is keep these trains on the same path. I'll set it so this one, I'll give this one the right of way initially, the green one. It should go through there straight, and that switch is straight, so that should keep it on that same side. Let's start it up and see what happens. Notice now the trains aren't swapping sides anymore. Each train is staying on its own route. The green train is staying on the left side as you're looking at it, and the red train is staying on the right side as you're looking at it. This is pretty much of a speed independent situation. It looks like the green one has the right of way, but that's just because it's getting there first. Actually, when they're on their own routes like this, whichever one gets there first will have to wait for the other one. I'm holding the red one back. Let's hold the green one back. This situation is pretty speed independent as far as I can tell when they're on their own separate routes. Here's a better example of two different speed trains operating on a system. The switches are still wired so that each train stays on its own side. The green train is still on here, but what I've done with this side, I put the handcar on, which runs significantly slower. Let's watch this operate. You can see the handcar takes its good old time getting around, but the green one basically just has to wait for it. Now I've shifted these wires on the switch motor back. I reversed these two input wires to the switch motor so the trains will again alternate routes. So now the handcar and the green train are going to swap sides or swap routes every time they go around. As far as speed, this still works, but if you get too much of a mismatch, it will basically, you've got to get your slow engine has to get through this single track area sometimes and across and around to trip the switch the other way. It has to do that sometimes before the other engine would get in here and catch it. So there is some speed considerations to be taken into account here. Generally, the shorter this single track section between the two switches are, the better it handles speed differences. If you open this single track up, make it longer by sliding these switches apart, you introduce a little more time dependency because you've got a longer period of time that your slow engine is going to take to get through this single track area and get across that track contact and get that switch thrown before the other train comes along. Let's watch these two operate. Again, they'll be changing the tracks now. Just to show you how you could have a problem if things got too slow as far as speed change. I'm just going to grab the handcar at an appropriate spot and show you how the system could get in trouble if the handcar was a little bit slower than it is. Now watch right here, if this handcar didn't get over this track contact, if I just delay it a few seconds, see it's in trouble. That handcar's in that branch. We saw how the switches configured for automatic route selection can handle two trains. Now the other variation we can run with these is add a block to each leg. There's a block over here, and over on this side is the other block. The track contact T2 that sets that block to green is mounted right here. For this block, the track contact is mounted down here, right at the exit of the block of the switch. For this block, the track contact is mounted over here, so it essentially interlocks these legs. This train can't go anywhere until this train leaves this block and passes over this track contact, which sets this block to green. Likewise, this train, should say back here, the train that will be stopped at this block can't go anywhere until this train goes over this track contact and sets that block to green. So this switch holds up the trains at this block just the same as before whenever it's necessary, and these blocks back here in the rear, they protect these trains from being run into while they're sitting there, because this block is interlocked with this train. It won't go green until this train leaves the leg and then clears that block. Now this system will look busy because it's on such a small layout. It's going to look awfully busy, but on a larger display layout it works pretty well. Let's take a look at this. Right now the right branch has the right of way. I'm going to try to shift the right of way to the left branch. You can see I shifted the right of way to the left branch. It operates just a little bit smoother. This is the configuration. The film segments I have on display layouts are operating in for automatic route selection. They've all got blocks and the two legs like this, except the trains won't be coming quite so close together because there's a lot more trackage on the system, but in principle it works the same way. The system is not foolproof by any means, but it is reasonably well interlocked. You can see there's a device to handle each of the 4 trains. The automatic route switching, the automatic switch handles 2, and then the blocks handle the other 2 basically. Returning to that same publication again, we can refer to publication to figure 34-1, time sequence for automatic routing 2 trains. This shows our same track setup as we had before, just arranged to operate 2 trains on it. Again, we've got a train starting back here, and now we've got a second train sitting on this block here. With our previous demonstration with just a single train, the block was actually operating, but it doesn't really make any difference for 1 train. You wouldn't even need the blocks there for 1 train. But with 2 trains, you have to consider that the block is going to have to do some work to keep them from colliding with each other at the converging switch. This block is shown heavy on this side and dotted on this side to indicate that the power is on this leg of the switch. So as this thing is shown, this train will have the right of way because this block is powered, this block is unpowered. So let's see if we can follow this diagram. This train will come through here. It's got the powered block, so it'll keep going, and it'll encounter a curved switch, at which point we can see over this panel going across the curved switch. Now it'll go across this track contact as it's shown over here. At that point, it'll be shifting this switch from curved to straight, and it'll also be shifting the power in this block. So going down to the next panel, we can see the switch has now been shifted to straight. This block has been turned on, which allows this engine to pull out, which it is shown doing. So this engine will go down and go across this track contact. Let's shift to this panel. It counters a straight switch is routed this direction, will go across this track contact, is shown over here. At that point, it'll shift the switch back to curved and change the block. And that shows in this last panel the switch has now been shifted to curve. The block has been shifted over to this side. Now this diagram continues on the next page. Continuing on this diagram, this engine is moving around the curve. The other engine has now come around and encountered a dead block and stopped. This engine is still in motion. Going to the next panel, this engine is going down through the between the switches and has encountered a curved switch and is traveling over that. Now it's shown going over the track contact, so it's shifting that switch from curved back to straight, and it's also changing these blocks. In the last diagram, it's shown going on up around this other side. This switch is now set to straight. This block has been turned on, which has released this engine. Continuing on, the engine just released is going over the straight switch. In the next panel, that engine goes over this track contact, which is shifting the switches and changing the block. Continuing on, that engine is going up the other side. This switch has now been changed to curved, and the block has been shifted to the track power over on this side, as shown by the heavy line. Finally, on the last panel, we're back at the same initial conditions we started at. This engine is coming around the curve. It has a right of way because its block power is shifted to this side. So this essentially is a time sequence diagram, as an attempt to show on paper how these things work. One of the reasons, as I mentioned earlier in this film, I think the video demonstrates it much easier than trying to show it on paper.